Hey party people, Kay here, and welcome to the Reformed Party Girls Guide podcast.
And I'm Ray. This is a podcast where we share our journey from the wild nights out, drinking and partying in late night adventures, to a calmer, more mindful life in sobriety.
This week's episode, we're going to dive into the topic of cocaine, where we were in our addiction, how we started it, how it influenced our 20s, and how we decided in our 30s to get out of it. We're going to start from the beginning.
Yeah, the good, the bad, the ugly. Take it away, Kay.
I think for myself, cocaine was really apparent and big in my life, mostly because my mom was an addict. And it was something as a young child I kind of knew existed, but I didn't really know what it was. My first kind of time trying to use it or going to use it, I actually got it from her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was 13. I was hanging out with some girls. We were smoking weed, and I was going to go over to a sleepover at their house. And for some reason, I was like, I'm going to bring over some of my mom's blow.
Oh, shit.
And I stole some of it. And it actually didn't end up well because my mom, again, being an addict, she knew what her supply was. She always knew how much she had on her. And so before I went to my friend's house, she actually grabbed me and pulled me aside and was like, I know you have my drugs.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah. And we actually got into a really big fight, like physical fight. She like pushed me down the stairs and I was like hitting her, and I actually ended up not going to my friends for the sleepover. I actually ended up moving out and living with my auntie, and that's how I ended up at my auntie's for 3 years. But that was kind of like my first little touch into it. I never did it. I never had the opportunity. My mom squashed that chance. But it wasn't until I was a little bit older. I was in university. I was going to school full time. I was taking night classes, so I was there from 6 to 9, Monday through Friday. And I was also working a full-time job at a mental health housing community center. My job was pretty much to be friends with schizophrenics and bipolars and people who didn't have families and were like legit crazy.
How was that?
It was insane. It was a lot. I was 19 years old. My housing situation wasn't good at the time. I was living in a trailer. Me and my sister were living in a trailer on my grandma's driveway. I was going to school full time, and then I just started this job, and I was working full time as well there. And yeah, being friends with crazy people, I've got stories. I've got stories for you. But when I was working there, I met this girl. She was a girl I worked with. She was one of the nurses that works there, and I would drive her home after work. And this one time, I went over to her place, and she had cocaine with her. And so we started doing it. And honestly, I was in a point in my life where I was just really stressed. You know, I was working a lot. I was going to school. My home life wasn't good. And, you know, I kind of just wanted to escape, right? And I think for me, like, I was always drinking as well, and then once you start doing cocaine, the two kind of go hand in hand.
Yes.
And we'll get into the relationship like the two of those things have with each other. But from then, you know, you hang out with people and they have it, and you start doing it, and before you know it, you get like a dealer's number. Actually, my first cocaine dealer was my mom's dealer.
Oh, wow.
I used to buy weed off him, and I didn't realize this until I got older, but my mom actually used to get me to pick up cocaine for her.
Oh,
from
you
this
didn't
guy.
realize
I didn't know.
Oh.
So I would buy weed from him. And he would sometimes give me envelopes and just say, "Hey, this is for your mom."
Oh my gosh.
And I never put two and two together until like the first time I bought cocaine from him. And then, then it started clicking and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what were in those packages. And so, that was my first cocaine dealer. And before you know it, I had 3 guys' numbers. It was always available. If one guy couldn't come, someone else would always be there.
Yeah.
And it just kind of got worse and worse and worse. I ended up going on paid leave from that job because I was under so much stress. And honestly, thinking back, I could probably relate it to my addiction.
Yeah.
My mental health was getting worse. My addiction was getting higher. My need for drinking and partying and escapism was matching what my life was going on. And I dropped out of school. And then I got a job at a bar, and it was just a culture that really accepted that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anyone really in my life to kind of say, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
I was around people who were doing it too, right? And I think that's one thing about cocaine that I've come to realize is how normalized it is.
Yes.
Right? Everyone talks about don't do heroin, don't do crack, don't do meth, yet cocaine is at that same level as those drugs, yet it's accepted, right? Someone could bust out a bag at a party and no one would say anything, at least with the people we were hanging out with, and it just became normal and it became a routine, and before you know it, it was every other day. It was honestly any time I drank.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, totally. And just like that saying, how they say, oh, cheese is expensive and everybody does cocaine. That's so true. You don't realize how many people do cocaine until you start doing it yourself. Oh my God, people you'd never think. And they're doing cocaine as well.
Well, and I think for me, it's then you start to gravitate towards those people.
Yes.
So, after that, I met the punk boys, right? And they were doing it. And I was doing it. So it's you find your people. You find your people that have the common habits as you, because you all normalize each other, and you don't really have anyone around to be maybe this isn't the best thing. And I think from there it really picked up.
Yeah.
And then I started working at a pub, and those days were wild, and the drinking and the money I was making and the cash flow I was having from serving was just constantly there. I would make $200 cash in my hand that night, finish my shift at midnight, go to a bar and drink, call a guy by 1 a.m., be up until 10, and that was my life for my 20s. And then we met each other, and it was
that's how we met.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we were around all those people.
Yeah.
And I feel did I think I was cool doing it? Kind of, I don't know.
I think so as well. For myself, yeah.
I didn't really have anyone growing up being you shouldn't do that, right? That rebellious, I was smoking cigarettes, I was smoking weed, I was drinking, I was doing drugs. It was rock and roll, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby.
Yeah.
And I thought I was the coolest person ever. But in reality, I was this really sad, lost, unhealthy 20-year-old who didn't really know what was going on, because I had no control over my life. And in those days, you have no responsibility, right? No responsibility. And I'm glad I got out of it.
Yeah, same.
I'm glad I grew up.
Yes.
I will say this, so out of everything, it is something I still think of like very often and miss.
Same.
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me your first time.
So my first time, I think I was 16 or 17. And before I tried cocaine, I tried ecstasy, and I loved ecstasy. I loved how it made me
Rock
feel.
and ride, baby.
Yeah, so when I tried cocaine for the first time, I was expecting the same feeling. I was like, I don't feel the same. Like, I thought it was dumb. I was like, the cocaine's stupid. Like, I don't like how this makes me feel. All I feel is I just feel really awake and really talkative.
Yeah.
And, like, I remember that night, like, I called my ex, and, like, he could just tell I was on something. And he answered. I'm surprised he answered. I don't remember what the conversation was like, but after that, I moved away to college and then never did any drugs. Just totally drank a fuckload.
Was it around a lot? Like,
no, I wasn't around it, but like all of my other friends were into it, which I didn't know. So they were all into it. Everyone else did it more than I did, and then I didn't start doing it till my early 20s. It was 2015, yeah. And the shitty thing is,
the same year we met.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reason I started doing cocaine was because I heard from a friend is, oh, it takes away your appetite, like you don't want to eat, blah blah blah. And that's when I gained like a shitload of weight. I like everything I tried wasn't working, plus I had eating disorders, which we'll talk about on another podcast.
Yeah.
And so I knew a girl in my hometown who was selling, and that's why I started doing it, was to take away my appetite. Wow. And then I realized, oh my God, I feel like confident and talkative, and like I just loved the way it made me feel.
Like a false sense of self,
yeah,
eh?
Yeah.
And did you lose weight? Like, did it?
No, like no.
Just makes you shit yourself.
And it's so fucking expensive. Like it's so fucking expensive just for a little bit of powder to go up your nose. And, it's shitty, like, ever since I started, like, I do cocaine, like, every event, even, like, I was in a couple weddings, like, every event, even, like business events like that, I do it because it made me more talkative, more confident.
Is it something you kind of, like, held to yourself?
Oh, yeah, right? I hit it
no
very
one
well.
Knew,
yeah,
right?
No
like
one.
A little key bump here, a little,
No, and then, of course, when I moved to the big city, and, like, with my crazy cousin, like, that's when we started getting into the party scene, and, like, it was always around, and that's, just like you said, like, alcohol and cocaine went together. Like, you didn't like the feeling of being drunk without having cocaine.
No.
And then, since then, it was, like, almost every time I go out, cocaine would go hand in hand, and there went all my money, and, like...
Yeah, all of the money.
Yeah.
I always say, my dealers out there, you're welcome for that house I bought you.
Yeah, no shit, fuck.
That island that you just put a down deposit on. You're welcome.
Yeah, and then especially, like, when my mom passed in 2017... Like, I'm pretty sure that year, every single weekend, I partied, drank, and did cocaine. Like, fuck, that's a lot. And also, I went into debt, like, 30 grand in debt. I'm pretty sure that was part of it. Well, obviously. Maxed out my credit cards, and then went into a consumer proposal. That's a whole other story. But, like... Fuck, you look back, like, how much money you fucking spent on that shit, but, like, I couldn't get enough. Like, I just fucking loved it.
There's a draw to it. Yes. And obviously that's the addiction talking, and, you know, us being out of it, we can really see it, but it's, like, there's some crazy stuff, like, that you do for it. Like, you know, when we were working at that pub, I had a coworker.
Yes.
And, we would finish work at 2, and we would stay up days and days and days, and it, like, got to the point where, like, I would look at her, and she would be messaging the dealers, asking them, like, why they can't come at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, she got pretty bad.
She got bad, and it's so funny, because we knew our dealers, and they would be like, I would be like, don't come back. Like, I'm like, we need to sleep. We're on day 3, man. Like, you know, when your people are telling you, like, don't come and sell me drugs, you know, like, it's bad.
Yeah.
But even, too, I look, and I'm like, why didn't I say that to her?
Yeah, well, it's like, because, like, we were part of it as well, right?
We were.
And, like, of course, we want to do it, we're all together, but, like, when we see her going off the deep end, it's like, oh, like, she shouldn't, but, like... Even if we did say something to her, she probably wouldn't have listened.
Wouldn't.
Like,
no.
Obviously not. If the dealers are telling her no and she's still bugging them, like...
It's crazy to look at, like the lines and, like, we used to do when we were young. Yes. And, like, how long one bag would last you. Mm-hmm. And then I look at, like, where it was, like, before I quit, mm-hmm. and, like, what I could put up my nose.
Right, like the fat Hollywood lines.
You're doing, like, 4 lines, like, back to back, yes, right? Yes. And it's, like, for a little bit, I honestly thought, I'm like, I think I'm just addicted to putting stuff up my nose. Yeah. And I wonder, is that an addiction?
I think so. It has to my be. Habit as well. Like,
yeah, I was like, I was like, I would put anything up my nose.
Yeah, there was a point in time, like, when I first moved to the city and I was going to school, like, of course I had no money, couldn't afford cocaine. I'd try to chop up a fucking Advil fucking pill. Like, of course it didn't do shit. Don't do that, by the way. Don't do it. Oh, and FYI, we're not condoning cocaine. Like, if you've never tried cocaine, please do not do it, because you will fucking love it, and then you'll go down the deep end. Yeah, we are not romanticizing
it. We're telling you how it affected our lives.
Yes, and, like, just like you said, like, I still think about it as well. I still get those cravings, but also near the end of me doing cocaine, like, it got to a point where it didn't make me feel good before. No. Like, I was becoming awkward and quiet, and I didn't want to talk. Like, I feel like I'd, like, jumble over my words and, like, getting all squirrely and weird.
Be very squirrely.
But yeah, it's like, oh, I want another one. I want another one. I want another one. And it's like, what the fuck? It's so weird how an addiction does that to you.
It is weird, and it's kind of scary. Like,
yes.
Did you ever have a time where it scared you, where you did it and you were like, oh, like, I'm almost dead, or, like, I could have been?
Yes, there's been times where, like, I'd come home after a long fucking night, like, at 6, 7, 8 a.m., and, like, I'd be laying in bed, and, like, my whole body would get so tense, and, like, I could feel and hear my heartbeat, and, like, my blood rushing through my body, and, like, there's times where I'm like, I feel like I might not wake up whenever I do fall asleep. I feel like I'm gonna fall asleep, but I'm not gonna wake up. Because, like, just that fucking feeling. I'm pretty sure, like, I was on the verge of overdosing when I was having those feelings.
It happened to me, too. It was one of my birthday weekends. And so, you know, partied with everyone, couple house parties. Then by, you know, a couple days when the party starts to die down. And parties die down because people stop having money.
Yes.
Yeah. The party will start on Friday when everyone's got paid, and the party will keep going until the booze and the drugs run out, and that's because everyone spent all their fucking money. Yeah. And at that point, I had gotten home, and, of course, being an addict, you know, you have your party supply, and then you have your personal supply that you keep on you. Yeah. And so I had my personal stuff and I finished that at home by myself, and I actually ended up calling 311.
Really?
Yeah, because I was throwing up. I couldn't get any water down. The booze was wearing off. I was sweating. I was dehydrated. And I really scared myself. Yeah. And she was like, have you slept? And I'm like, no, I haven't slept in 4 days. She's like, have you drank any water? And I'm like, every time I try to drink water, I throw it up. And she was like, you should go to the hospital. I ended up waiting it out. Yeah. I ended up eventually falling asleep and feeling better. But the sad thing is that moment wasn't enough.
Yeah, you forget about it. Like, let's do it again the next weekend.
It wasn't enough for me.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of both of us to be able to kick it and, like, recognize, like, its effect that it had on us. Yeah. You know, it was a lot, and it was a lot of money, and, you know, I've had so many mornings where I've beat myself up about it that, you know, I can't do that to myself anymore, and I have to look at, like, what it's done positively in my life. You know, it gave me those experiences. It gave us the perspective to be able to relate and see it for what it really is and make us who we are now. Yeah. It'd be really easy to go and, like, regret all of those things and hold that with us for the rest of our lives. Yeah. But that in itself, too, isn't healthy. Yeah. Right? And so we have to look at what it did to shape who we are now, and, you know, we are who we are.
Yeah.
And we can recognize its effect it had on us.
Yeah. And I will say, like, because I deal with, like, stomach and digestive issues now, and I'm pretty sure that's what caused it was cocaine. Because I remember when I first started doing it, I was, like, reading up about it, and it said, like, can cause digestive issues and stomach issues and yada, yada, yada. And still to this day, I'm dealing with that shit. Like, and also it fucks with your brain. Oh, and a story I just remembered when I first moved to the city, I was kind of seeing this guy, and I'd go to his place, and, like, we'd be doing blow and whatnot. And this one night, I stayed there till 10 a.m. We're doing cocaine and speed, by the way, which he's like, oh, it's like the same as cocaine, but better. And, like, I didn't know it was, like,
what it really was. Yeah.
So I come home. I remember I'm, like, laying on the bed, hungover as fuck. I get up to walk to the kitchen, and I fucking fainted. I fell straight back.
The head rush.
Yeah, I fell straight back. I wake up. My dog's, like, standing over me, like, oh, what's wrong? And, like, I had this huge fucking goose egg on the back of my head, and I did get a concussion. And that's when, yeah, the concussion was fucked. Like, I couldn't sleep. I remember laying in bed and seeing, like...
Did he stay?
No, this was when I went home later that day. And I remember, like, laying in my bed, like, seeing symbols all over my walls. And I remember, like, the clothes hanging on the back of my door were, like, floating, like, moving.
Oh,
I was like, what the fuck? It was so fucked up. And, like, I couldn't, like, talk properly for the next few days. And I found that took a long... Like, that effect... had its hold on me for, like, years after. Like, I found, like, I struggled to, like, I had to really think about what I was going to say before I say it.
Concussions are pretty serious. Your
brain
brain is so important.
And I remember, like, even that same day after I had a concussion, like, oh, I want to go to the water park. I fucking drive to the water park. I remember sitting on the chairs, like, by the water, and, like, oh, I feel like I shouldn't stand up because I'll probably faint again.
Yeah.
And, like, to look back, like, I should not have drove, but, like, your mind obviously isn't right. Like, I had a fucking concussion, and it's like, even that never sparked me up. I still continued doing it. I think that following weekend I went back to his house, and we're doing blow again. It's like, you don't learn your lesson.
Well, it's that, and that's the addiction part of it. It, like, hooks you, and it finds excuses and reasons to, like, normalize it and make it okay. And I think, like, for me is, like, my relationship with it was, I fell in love. Like, I had that. It was my relationship to the drug that no one else had. And you know, you could do it by yourself, or you do it secretly.
Yes.
And I think when you hold a secret like that, right, the longer and longer you keep it from people, keep it from your family and your friends, is, like, the deeper and deeper you go into it. Because then you feel like you don't have anyone you can talk to about it.
Yep.
You get scared if you told people, like, how much you're doing it, that they would think of you differently, right?
Yep.
And then it just becomes, like, this lie that you're hiding for so long that then you almost feel like you can never tell. And then I feel like that's what addiction is and how it gets a hold of you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's scary when you want to tell someone. And I think that's why you and I, like, a big part of our relationship is, like, you know, partying and going out and doing cocaine was a big part of our relationship. But I also think the no judgment is, like, we could talk about those stories to each other, or those nights and doing it, and we had no judgment towards each other.
Yeah, and I couldn't talk about that with my friends or family back home because it's such a small town. Like, I'm always so scared of it getting around to my family. And, like, even though I had close friends, like, I still didn't tell them. Like, I was scared. And, like, another thing that just popped in my head is when I was still in school, going to college in the city, I went applying for jobs at the mall, and, like, I kept doing lines between because it gave me that confidence and that I was talkative and, like, just so fucked up to think
It is
of that.
fucked up. I was working at this Ukrainian restaurant in the food court of the mall, and I used to do lines on shift, like, in the mall bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, the the crazy things, I look back and I'm like, how did no one know?
Yes.
I'm like, how did no one know?
Yeah, or even like I was doing it on my fucking aunt's funeral, like
Right?
in her house, like so fucked up, like.
It's crazy.
Didn't matter where, when, why. I was doing cocaine because I fucking loved it. I loved how it made me feel, and
it's like that love-hate relationship. It's like an ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
But here we are now, and I think like my decision to stop doing it, has been one of the best decisions of my life.
Amen.
And I think like the clarity you gain when you stop drinking and you stop doing drugs, it takes a long time, but when we can look back and look at these stories and laugh at them and think like, wow, I was so naive. I was so young.
Yes.
And then us now, like...
Yeah, like, look at us.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. And I think that's, like, a big thing, like, we haven't really touched on yet, is when we run into people, I think we surprise them. I don't think there was a lot of people that we both knew that believed that we would ever get out of it.
Yes, 100%. Like, me and you are, like, the biggest party girls ever. Like, even, like, I'm pretty sure people don't believe that we're the sober girls now. And, like, super calm and chill and just loving life.
Yeah, and we can still go out and, we do look at our watch at 9 p.m. and we'll look at each other and be like, I think it's time to go home now. Why we even have a hard time putting makeup on.
Yes, like I hate wearing makeup now because I hate washing it off. I hate washing it off. The worst.
Amen to our frontal lobes developing.
Right.
But I don't regret it. I think life is so much better without it. And just understanding the hold that it has on us.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we had fun.
We did have fun.
We had fun.
Yeah, we had deep talks. Like, a lot of it I can't remember because, of course, you're fucked up. But it's nice having those talks, especially where I come from. I couldn't be open and honest. And coming to the city, everyone's so open and chill and honest. And you can just talk about anything with anyone. I didn't have that from my hometown, right? So, yeah, it's... Look at us now.
Look at us now.
Should we talk about that river float? Or should we save that?
Yeah. Tune into our next episode.
Okay, we'll save it.
We have some more crazy stories. And we will deliver.
Yes.
Please comment, like,
email us.
Email, share your story. We want to hear it. And if you're out there struggling with addiction, don't be afraid to reach out and gain support, because there are people out there who are there to help.
Yes, like you got this. Like if we could do it, literally anyone can do it.
Anyone can do it.
Yes.
All right, you guys. Have a good one.
Much
love you. Bye.
Bye.